Well, as we enter this summer of the rebuild, we enter this summer hopefully of revolution, not evolution. There are some big decisions for our board, for our manager, and for our director of recruitment to take. Now, whilst I have the utmost confidence in Niels Koppen and Philippe Clement to go out there and recruit the right players, to bring in the uh, right talents to really make this team a threat, to make this team effective, to make this team one that is going to go on and actually win the league, win the Scottish Cup and win the League Cup and compete in Europe. I do trust them to do that. The one worry I do have, obviously, about this rebuild is around the board. I have big concerns over John Bennett, over James Bisgrove, over the investment they are going to put into the club. I will do a video on the board and talk about the issues surrounding the board, obviously. Now, two of the players that decisions need to be taken over going into this summer of rebuilding, hopefully, are Abdallah Sima and Oscar Cortes, two exceptionally talented wingers, two very, very good players. Two players that, if they'd stay fit from January onwards, I think would have had us certainly challenging right up until the very end. I think, with the combination of maybe keeping Danilo fit, probably could have won us the league. Cortes, when he came in from Lens, looked quick, he looked skillful, he looked effective, he looked dangerous going forward. He certainly seemed to look a top player. And, after he went down injured against Killy, our form did seem to drop off a lot, and the threat he carried. Now, one of the things that's been levelled at Rangers is the lack of pace, the lack of us, well, the fact that we are very, in the words of a lot of analysts, warm-paced. Certainly having Abda and Oscar would have certainly overcome that, because both those guys are extremely quick. Now, I know Matondo is quick, but Oscar and Abda obviously can combine that speed with a whole lot of skill and a whole lot of ability to take people on and beat them. Now, I just want to share something with you. Can you just suspend your your whole idea, suspend your imagination for a moment. Now, could you imagine going into the end of the season from January onwards, if we'd had this foursome attacking teams in the SPL, if we'd had this foursome attacking Celtic, if we'd had them going after them? These four have got pace, they have got strength, they have got tenacity, they've got skill and ability. And I honestly think this would have made a huge difference to this season. And I know before anyone puts in the comments about it, hindsights and what ifs are great things. But for me, that four there carries a whole lot more threat than the four we had for the majority of the rest of the second half of this season. You had Abda on the right, Cortes on the left. You carry speed there. You carry the threat to go outside, to come inside. You carry the ability to deliver a lethal ball, to score a goal, to take a chance. Danilo, I think, is much the better striker than Dessers. You've only got to look back across what he's done at Feyenoord, what he's done in his career. And, the fact that I think to kind of judge him now in terms of saying that he's not good enough is not really fair. I mean, his goals to games ratio is actually quite good. His goals per minutes ratio is actually quite good at this moment, even with him not playing a whole lot of games. And I know people talk about, he's injury prone. Well, actually, he isn't injury prone. Both his injuries have actually come as the result of impacts. They're not muscle injuries. They're not weaknesses there. I mean, his injury, obviously, his first one was the fractured cheekbone, which was him scoring a goal and getting his face annihilated by the St Johnstone player. His second injury was a foul by a Hearts player to injure his ACL. So, neither of those injuries are his fault. They are both from hammer throwers basically going for him. And I think that Danilo, on the whole, for me, would have been a lot more effective in the second half of the season than Cyril Dessers. Certainly more reliable at taking those chances. So, in terms of what does the future hold for Abda and for Oscar Cortes, let's start with Abdallah Sima. We will get to Oscar Cortes, where there is perhaps a little bit more of an opportunity for Oscar to come into the club, and we'll talk about how that is already kind of been talked about and negotiated by Rangers. So hang on for that. It is upcoming. So let's talk about Abda first of all. I've got no doubt in my mind that Abdallah Sima is an absolute quality player. He is an absolute talent. I'm a huge fan of Abdallah Sima. He's quick, he's direct, he's good in the air, he's good on the ground. He's one of the best finishers at the club. He's certainly someone that, when the ball falls to him in the box, you can kind of rely on him to take his chances, and he takes a whole variety of different chances. He scores those spectacular goals like the one against PSV. He scores those, those scruffy goals like the one against Celtic in the Old Firm at Ibrox, where the ball falls to him, he controls and hits it and smashes it in the back of the net. He can even score that poacher's goal. Well, he did score it, and it was disallowed wrongly in the cup final as well. So he's got a whole host of different goals in his locker. He's good in the air, something our strikers often aren't. And certainly, when he came on in the second half of that game at Ibrox against them, he posed Greg Taylor no end of problems. He was strong, he was direct, he was quick, he threatened him at all occasions. He can play wide right, wide left, he can play through the middle. He is a top talent, and I think he's someone who, even if you're paying 5-6 million for him, he's someone that 18 months, 2 years down the line, you could be flipping for somewhere in excess of 15 million pounds, back to the Premier League or back or into Europe. He is that good. I know his injury history is slightly checkered, but I think that this is a young player who's still developing, a young player who's still growing into the game, and I think someone who will have a huge effect for Rangers. Like I said, I would love Abda to stay. I think he is a top talent. Now, Abdallah Sima has been talking about the future. Now, his position obviously is in somewhat of a flux because of the fact that Brighton are without a manager currently. Roberto De Zerbi obviously leaving the club at the end of the season. So without a manager, and also their director of recruitment, Paul Jewell, left during, not Paul Jewell, Sam Jewell, that's his son, left during the season. So it's another one, it is another issue there. So they're still going to be looking at, obviously, the new manager comes in, he's going to want to look at players. So I think this could be a situation where the Abdallah Sima deal is not done anywhere near quickly. It will maybe, mid-window, end of the window, depending on obviously what Brighton judge. And, Abdallah Sima is a player who is coming towards the end of his contract as well. That is going to affect his value. The moment a player comes towards the end of his deal, you are automatically there for, reducing his cost, his price. Now, according to Transfer Market, which is a fantastic place for stats and information about players, top players, guys, if you want to check out some latest stats on your players or whatever. Now, his contract with Rangers expires on the 31st of May, so it expires Friday. So he will no longer be a Rangers player as of Friday, which is obviously a little bit of a worry. We would love to obviously to have it more confirmed that he's going to stay here. As for his Brighton contract, his Brighton contract expires on June the 30th, 2025. So he's got just over a year remaining on his deal. Now, this is going to substantially affect what Brighton can charge for him, because clubs are going to look at him and say, well, do you know what? We want Abdallah Sima, but if you're going to charge stupid amount of money for him, if you're going to ask, say, 10, 12, 15 million for him, he's still young, he's 22 years old. We're going to wait. We're going to wait till January, where his value is going to be non-existent, or we're going to wait till January to agree a pre-contract with him, and then we're going to get him for nothing next summer. So for Brighton, there is that need, I think, to cash in on their asset, to look at moving him on and getting some money for him. And that puts Rangers in a real pole position in my estimations, and I think there is a deal to be done there. By Niels Koppen, James Bisgrove, Craig Robertson et al. With the Brighton board. Now, like I said, Abdallah Sima has been talking about his future. This is what he had to say in an interview that he gave. He was asked, obviously, about his future and about staying at Rangers. He said, it's not up to me, which is true. It's not up to him. Obviously, he will have a say in where he wants to play. All players do. But, if a club decides to sell you somewhere, realistically, that's where you're going to end up. Barring a complete contract negotiation breakdown or whatever. But he did say this. He says, I always say I feel at home here and I'm happy to be here. I've always loved to give everything for this shirt. And I think we can all say that is 100% accurate. Abda is someone who does give everything for the club. We can see that he loves Rangers. He loves the fans. He loves being here. He loves representing the club. So for me, that desire to play, that hunger to represent Rangers is something we need to be encouraging. The more players we have that want to play for that jersey, the more players we want to have that want to fight for that shirt, the better for the club. Abda went on to say this. Now, there's some really interesting comments in what he's got to say here in terms of Rangers. And I think some huge hints that he's dropping to the board that he wants to say. He says, as I say, this feels like home. I feel everyone wants to stay in a place that feels like home. So we will see in the next few weeks. So it's clear that, Abda is very settled here. He's very happy here. And, he wants this done sooner rather than later. I don't think he wants this hanging over him for a long time in the summer. So there's a chance there that this could be pushed through quite quickly, I suppose, looking at what Abda has to say for himself. He says, I think I can be proud of my season and happy with what I've contributed. I wanted to do more, but of course, I've had a bad moment with my injury, which ruled me out for a long time. But I'm always looking forward and I'm not looking back. He's obviously a player with a very positive mindset, a very good growth mindset, someone who wants to be successful, someone who wants to better himself. And that's the sort of player we need to be bringing in this summer, someone with ambition, someone who hasn't got mental scar tissue, someone who wants to develop themselves and be a challenger long term. He says, I really wanted to win the cup for the club, for my teammates, and I think we deserve to do that, to be honest. I think he's 100% right. We were the better team, but it wasn't enough, and now we need to look forward to next season. And it's interesting that Abda is talking about we need to look forward to next season. I think dropping a huge hint that he wants to be here, that he wants to wear that jersey again, that he wants to be a Rangers player. So it's all now, I think, down to Brighton and Rangers to work something out. And I think, look, it is quite clear, I think, that if Sima wants to stay and we can get something done for a reasonable amount of money, then this is a no-brainer for me, an absolute no-brainer for Sima. I get with the injuries, but the contribution is phenomenal from him. And I honestly believe that if he'd stayed fit and played the whole season, he'd have scored more goals than Cyril Dessers. I mean, in terms of his overall stats this season, 39 appearances, 18 goals, 2 assists, 20 goal contributions in 39. Now, remember, this is a guy who played the majority of the season as a winger, not as a centre forward, as a winger. Goal every 166 minutes, which I believe is better than Cyril Dessers. 18 goals, from midfield, from a wing position is absolutely superb. And like I said, I think he could have easily been our top scorer had he remained fit all season. So, look, for me, there's a clear signal there been sent by Abdallah Sima to both clubs that he wants something done and he wants to remain here. So that is a big hope for me, a big positive for me. So as for what the future holds for him, hopefully it will be at Rangers as a Rangers player. Okay, so let's move it along now and talk about the young Colombian winger, Oscar Cortes. Now, Oscar Cortes joined on loan in January from Racing Club Lens in France with an option to buy, not an obligation to buy like the deal was done for Mohamed Diamande. It was an option to buy. He's only 20 years old. So again, he's a player that very much fits that trading model, but a player that has already, played a number of games, that has experience at the highest level, has been capped by Colombia, has been capped at every underage level by Colombia, is a very talented someone, who is a clear quality player. He can play as an attacking midfielder. He can play as a right winger. He can play as a left winger. He can play and expires on May the 31st, on Friday. Decision time is fast approaching with Oscar Cortes. Now, some talk in the media that he is going to be available for around £3.5 million. I think it's more close to 2.5, 3 from what I've heard. Also, the fact that there was that option to buy. Now I don't know what the option was agreed at. I'm sure that he between Oscar's club and Rangers. Now he's under contract of 2028, so he's certainly not in that kind of Abdallah Sima kind of bracket of, been only a few months left on his deal. Now, in terms of Oscar's stats from last season, now that includes some of his stats for Racing Club Lens. He played 6 times for Rangers in the Scottish Premier League, scoring 1 goal and having 1 assist. He played a number of games in France, in particular in Ligue 1, 4 goals, 4 games, 1 goal, 1 assist. He also played in the Scottish Cup, where he had 1 game and 1 assist. So his record last season is pretty decent, 17 games. He's a young player up and coming young player, only 20 years old, 9 goal contributions in 17 games is absolutely excellent. Again, another player who is quick, who is direct, who is skillful. Now, what I'm hearing is that Rangers are trying to negotiate a further loan for Cortes, using the argument that the option to buy cannot be exercised at this point because they haven't had enough time to look at the player, to judge the player, to see whether he truly fits into the Rangers system and fits into the club and fits in with what they're trying to do. Now, if this is something they can pull off, I think this would be spot on because, like I said, we signed him as a player with an option to buy. Now, when you get a player with an option to buy, you like to see that player over a number of games, that player go out and impress over a number of games. Now, he's certainly impressed in the limited sample that we've seen from Oscar. Like I said, he has all the attributes to go on and be a really, really top player. I mean, there was even rumors going around at the before the season even finished that Atletico Madrid reportedly were monitoring Oscar Cortes and his progress. Now, Cortes obviously missed the whole the end of the season. He is back in rehab, as Danilo Pereira dropped a video on Instagram of him and Oscar Cortes in the Rangers gym working hard to regain their fitness. Now, like I said, a lot depends on what happens in the next couple of days with these players. It is May the 31st, their deadline. I think, overall, if we can sign Abda on a permanent basis and get Oscar Cortes back on loan, it's a win-win situation. That puts into the mix straight away 2 very good, quick, speedy, fast, aggressive running wingers. Certainly something we need if we're going to go on and challenge Celtic and progress in Europe next season. They're the types of players who can make a huge difference. And I think as well, looking at the talent of Cortes, the talent of Sima, you've got 2 players there who I think can actually compete in Europe as well. And if we do qualify for the Champions League, we are seeded now for that Champions League draw, which will put us in good stead to get a reasonable tie in the qualifying rounds. I think we can, at least hold our own and not be embarrassed as we were the last time we were in the Champions League. So, look, for me, Cortes, again, a no-brainer. I'd be happy to sign him now, but I think, it's genius. It's a great move if we can get him on loan again next season and then exercise the option to buy next summer for around £2.5–3 million. And I hope Rangers do agree a price on the player and not allow it to be a price that can fluctuate upwards, certainly upwards, because of his performances. If he goes and have a great season, we certainly don't want to be paying masses of money for him in the next summer window. Well, guys, let me know what you think of these two players. Do you think we need to re-sign them? If you do, how do you want it done? Do you want them both signed straight away, full-time deals? Or do you agree with the approach the club seems to be taking? Abda on a permanent, Cortes on loan. Let me know what you think. And as always, guys, please obviously subscribe to the channel. Help Glasgow Rangers Nation to keep on growing. And on the way out, you know what? There's 2 things I always ask of you. Number 1, smash that like. It defeats that evil algorithm. And number 2, please remember, don't ever forget, we are the people.